Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Doing What Matters podcast. It is always good to be back with you and leaning into how we are living out this different way of doing life, really living from a place of rest, not rush, and leaning into a rule of life. One of the things I talk about a lot is the pre-decision of how you want your life to live out and how we have a framework for doing that. That way we really can focus on doing what matters. So if you're new to the Doing What Matters podcast, I invite you to go check out the website at therealifeprocess.com and just connect with us there. Maybe download a couple of our free downloads right there on the homepage. We have some information and a way that you can connect with us and get on our email list, join our free community, all those types of things. We would love to connect with you. If you're new here to the podcast, that is the best place to connect with us, is to start at the website and then come into our free online community where we just have a group of people that are living into doing life differently from that place of rest, not rush. On today's episode, I want to dive into something that I've been contemplating and thinking on in my own life. And so maybe it's something that will resonate with you. And I want to talk about 5 ways we can continue to develop our skills in whatever profession that we're in. If you are a professional in your industry, how do you stay in continual development? When I write out my real life view, which is my rule of life statement that we use here in the framework that I have a place for something I call self-care and soul care. And in that big rock of self-care and soul care is always a little bit of discernment and decision-making around this idea of continuing to develop my craft. Now, for me, that craft is being a content creator, being an author, being a speaker, being a coach. Those are all kind of the ways I show up in the world. Now, for you, that may be totally different. You may be sitting in a leadership position within an industry, within a nonprofit, within a church, within a business organization or corporate structure, whatever that is. But you have a seat on the bus, whether that's the owner or another role that you play. But in each of those seats, we develop our skills and sharpen our saw, as they say. I used to read a lot from Stephen Covey, and he would talk about sharpening your saw. And I think that's probably the first time 25, 30 years ago, back in my early 30s, that I was introduced to this idea of professional development, personal development, those types of things. And Stephen Covey, John Maxwell, those people were some of those early people that I learned from. But I want to explore 5 different areas that I think we can look at when we continue to develop out the role that we play, the skills that we use, the craft that maybe we're focusing in on. And so let's look at all 5 of these pretty quickly here today on this episode. We won't cover everything. Obviously, we can't do that. We could spend an episode on each of these, but I just want to give you 5 things to consider. The first one is, I think, the most important one in any type of development, personally and professionally, and that's embracing a growth mindset. But what is a growth mindset, right? That phrase is thrown around a lot, but what really is it? To me, a growth mindset is believing in the ability and your intelligence and all of those things can be developed and grow through dedication, hard work, learning. If you put in the time and the effort, people with a growth mindset see challenges as opportunities to grow and to learn. And they tend to have that ability to persist in the face of setbacks. Now, I believe everybody can develop a growth mindset. I think it takes community. I think it takes some coaching, some mentoring, someone to model it for you and challenge you in that. But a growth mindset is a belief system that you grow into, as opposed to having a fixed mindset. Now, a fixed mindset is where you believe that the abilities, intelligence, and talents are fixed and you can't move past them, and that there is a certain amount of those things that's been given to you and nothing can change that. And so someone with a fixed mindset will often be like, that's just the way I am, or that's the way it is, or that's the way the world is. And they often can feel threatened actually by the success of other people. So I think one of the first things that you and I have to decide is, are we going to be a person that has a growth mindset? Or are we going to be a person that has a fixed mindset? Now, there are lots of other ways through coaching and different things that fixed and growth mindset can be defined, but it is, I think, a skill that you can learn to have a growth mindset, and it takes practice. But that practice of working with someone to work on your growth mindset and opening up that idea will be the hugest part of your professional development. Now, it also affects your personal development, right? But I'm talking about your profession on this podcast. So that's the first one. And I think the impact of that in your profession is going to change everything. I'll give you an example. If you would have told me even 6 years ago that I would write a book someday, I had a very fixed mindset around the fact that I could be an author. My mother was an author. She's written several books. I knew a lot of people that were authors. I had started to hang out in that world. And yet I had a mindset that I was not a writer. And that was really the story that I told myself. I'm not a writer. And I had people begin to challenge that for me, which was awesome. I had a community, had friends, I had coaches and spiritual directors that kind of began to speak into me to change that mindset, to change that story that I had in my head. And over time, some successes, some failures, I began to see that, yes, I could become a writer. And I started to take incremental steps towards writing. I had to be very mindful to set it up and challenge myself and to develop that writing skill. And over time, I overcame that fixed mindset that I am a writer. And now I can say, I am a writer. I have authored a book. I have a growth mindset about writing. I have a growth mindset about even possibly writing a second book. And that has come over time, and accountability and coaching and those types of things. But I think that's a huge part of professional development, is becoming a growth mindset person. I do think it takes some of those things, embracing the challenge, persisting, doing a reset. It's one of the reasons actually in the framework that we teach and that we use for life management and rule of life, that we call them projects instead of goals. Projects, to me, this is just my personal opinion, is a growth mindset word. It's a project. I'm working on it. I might take a step back now and then and have to reevaluate my project, but then I'm going to move forward. So it gives me the ability to keep in a growth mindset and to keep working on that project and keep developing. Embracing the challenge, persisting in the face of setbacks, seeing efforts as a path to that mastery, learning from criticism, and finding lessons and inspiration in the success of others. Those things can all lead to a growth mindset. So let me say those again. A growth mindset, some of the tips to move into that are: embrace the challenges, persist in the face of setbacks, see efforts as a path to mastery, learn from criticism, find lessons and inspiration in the success of others. So you see some key words there. Of much of that's going to take either a mentor, a coach, some accountability, changing our growth mindset. Even if you read books, that's going to be input from other people. So you're going to have to get around some of those things to switch to a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. So that's the first one. And I think that's the biggest one in continuing developing your skills in your profession. The second one is setting specific growth opportunities. And I would call these setting up a project around personal development. In our framework, we love 90-day projects. And so breaking something down that you want to develop in your profession, and whether that's a course that you want to take, or a class that you want to learn from, or a book, or a new system that you want to lean into, but aligning a project around one of those things with where you want to go in your profession. I'll give an example of it might be important for you to learn a new piece of software because it's really important in your profession. Even the example of learning to use AI, artificial intelligence, and how is it impacting your industry? How is it impacting your professional development? Even if you're not going to be using it a whole lot, knowing about it might be important. So you might set up a 90-day project to learn about how artificial intelligence is being used in your industry. Is there a software that's being used a lot? That type of thing. That's a really good example of setting a specific learning goal around your profession. And I would break that down into a project. I want to learn AI in the next 90 days around this software. Here's the 5 to 10 action steps that I need to take. To do that, I'm going to take this course. I'm going to hire this coach. I'm going to subscribe to this software, whatever it's going to be, to learn that thing, whatever it is. So that's the second one. The third thing that we can do to develop skills in our profession is to, and this is my favorite because you know, if you've been listening, how much I love community, is learning to leverage professional networks and mentors and coaches and developing those relationships. For me, in my industry and in my business as a coach, an author, a speaker, a content creator, this has been my number one thing that I've used to develop my skills. Because developing those strong professional networks and mentors accelerates the skill development, accelerates the learning. And some of the ways you can do that are be part of a community, either in a paid membership or a small mastermind type of group, but a group of people that maybe are in your profession. I do that in a couple of different ways, and I provide that for others in a couple of different ways. I have a local women's business development chapter called She Is, a group of women that come together to sharpen each other's saws and learn from one another and leverage our professional networking. I've been part of several online masterminds that are groups of authors, speakers, content creators, that kind of coaches, that kind of thing to develop. I have a group of coaches and spiritual directors and consultants that use our content in the work that they do, the Real Life Process content, that is a group of professionals that network together. We actually even call it the RLP network, the Real Life Process Network, because we're all doing the same type of work together and we're living the same kind of lives together around life management, rule of life content through the Real Life Process. So that benefit just is like pouring gas on a fire to skill development and professional development. In fact, my CEO local chapter met today. I'm recording this podcast later in the evening, and we met today, and I probably learned 3 or 4 things from these women that get together. And I'm actually the one even leading the group, but I always learn from them. And I always, iron sharpens iron. I get excited, I get energy, I get momentum from being around people, number one, that have a growth mindset. So make sure when you choose your group, you're choosing something that's a group of people that have a very much a growth mindset, and these women do. And they are generous and giving and share tips and resources and all kinds of things with each other as they come together. So that third one of networking with others in your industry or in similar industries, I think is huge and so important. So the fourth way that you can continue to develop in your skill and in your profession is to regularly seek feedback and reflection. Now, the importance of constructing feedback can, again, come from this network. It can come from one-to-one coaching, mentors, supervisors, that type of thing. But I also think you can do your own reflecting and feedback. One of the things we talk about in our framework is having a regular time of weekly review and reflection. So I'll look back and I'll look forward. What went well in my past week? What do I want to continue to work on, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in profession? That feedback and reflection can come from others, but you can also teach and train yourself to do that weekly review or a 90-day reset up on the balcony every 90 days. But the importance of using feedback for improvement and learning and evaluation is another thing that people that are developing their skills and profession, and if you interview and talk to people that have been successful in your industry, they're going to tell you that they're always seeking feedback and reflection and input from other people or doing it themselves. So that's the fourth one, is regular feedback and reflection. And then the last one, we would probably assume, and it's a given, but I'm going to say it and include it, is to stay updated with your industry trends. So you know your industry, you know the field that you're in, you know the work that you do. So for me, for example, I need to stay updated on the latest trends as a speaker, as an author, as a coach, and as a content creator. And I talked about it earlier, the impact that artificial intelligence or AI is having on all of our industries. I am learning about AI and its effect in each of those areas as I create content, as I speak, as I coach, as I write. What is the impact that AI is having right now? And if I had to tell you of anything that you want to be on top of right now within your industry, because I know it's there, it would be AI. How is it affecting your industry? How do you need to learn about it? You don't need to learn everything. So your industry may not be affected at all by how AI can write music, but someone that's a musician might want to know about that. So whatever is specific to your industry, you'll probably want to learn about. Find out ways to stay informed. Maybe you need to subscribe to certain emails, certain people that are leaders in your industry. Maybe there are articles or podcasts you need to listen to, or journals that you need to read, or workshops or seminars that you need to attend on a regular basis to stay up to date in your industry. The person that starts to fall behind in their professional development is when you say, I know everything. I know all that. I am not excited anymore to learn anything new. That's when you might want to consider maybe I don't need to be in this industry anymore. Maybe I'm ready for a change. Maybe I need a transition. When you stop desiring to learn of the trends. That happened to me, actually. When I was serving in full-time ministry, I hit that place where I did not care that I knew the latest in lighting and technology and the software and everything that it took to put on a worship service every Sunday in the style that we were doing. And that was one of the things that told me it was time for me to make a shift and a change, is when I lost interest in the industry and in staying up to date and learning. So evaluate that and think, where am I learning? What new thing is coming out in my industry, and who would I follow? Where would I want to learn about this, and who from? These are the 5 things that I think you can look at when you say, how do I want to stay on top of developing my skills in my profession? First is embracing a growth mindset over a fixed mindset. Second is setting up those specific projects and learning goals, learning what you want to learn in the next 90 days and what you might want to learn about. And then leveraging your network and finding a network, finding a group of people and a community to be with that's in your industry, seeking feedback and reflection from not only learning it to do it for yourself, but from others, and then staying up to date with industry trends. I would love to hear from you, Teresa at REALIFEProcess.com. And I would love to hear, what is the area that you feel like you need the most in your life right now? Is it networking? Is it setting up some certain learning goals that you want to do in the next 90 days? Is it changing that mindset? Do you need feedback and reflection? Do you need to stay update with the industry standards? Do you feel, or trends? Do you feel like you've gotten a little stale? I'd love to know from you. Sometimes just to say it out loud is helpful. Or if you have any questions about anything we've talked about today on the podcast that I have mentioned, shoot me an email. I love to answer questions here on the podcast, and I love to hear from you as a listener. So Teresa, Teresa at REALIFEProcess.com will get you straight into my inbox. I promise I answer and read all of my own emails. And so I would love to hear from you. And I really do hope that you are excited about the profession that you are in. And I really hope that you will lean into continuing to sharpen the saw and develop your skills. Part of developing your skills as a professional is also leaving room in your day to notice all of the other things that are great in life. So having our profession is just part of who we are as a whole person. And so I encourage you to, yes, pour into your profession and learn and grow and all of those things, but don't miss the moments along the way. So many of those moments involve relationships with those that we love and that we care about. And so don't miss those as well. And remember that every ordinary day has an extraordinary moment. You just have to look for them. I'll be back next week, friend, with more from the Doing What Matters podcast.